Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Driscoll, and I'm with Communications in the City of Edmonton. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the city plan. With us today is Mayor Dawn Iveson, as well as Interim City Manager Adam Laughlin. We'll have them speak, and then we'll go to questions. But before I do, I just want to take this opportunity to thank our interpreters. Thanks to Kevin Culp and Helen McLeod. Thanks very much. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, and thank you for being here today, whether virtually or in person. Today marks an important milestone in Edmonton's journey to become a healthy, urban, climate-resilient, and cost-effective city of 2 million people that supports a prosperous region. This is one of the pieces of public policy that I will be most proud of when I leave office next year, because it embodies one of the most important aspects of why I became mayor: to build a better city for our next generation, so that more of our kids and grandkids might choose to stay here and be proud of their hometown and help to build it. And so through the city plan, council and administration have come together on a shared path towards our future city, a future city that, in spite of this pandemic, embodies the values and goals of Edmontonians, who helped to build this plan through extraordinary public engagement. And without their vision for the future of our city, we wouldn't be here today. This city plan is intergenerational work. It's about keeping Edmonton functioning as it grows so that we and future generations can thrive. It's about ensuring we stay competitive and attractive relative to other cities, so that when we emerge from this pandemic, we're in a good position to battle other big cities for top talent, both in terms of attracting people to our city and keeping our younger generation here in Edmonton. The city plan helps prepare Edmonton for the transition to a major urban center of 2 million people, however long it takes for us to get to that milestone. But it is intentional in its goals to drive growth to be more fiscally efficient for taxpayers, and also in its goal to build a city that is more climate resilient, both lower in greenhouse gases and with a robust public transit infrastructure, for example, as well as building a city that is more healthy and ever more inclusive as well. The city plan is also about building an Edmonton that is connected and community focused. The city plan's 6 guiding values are the city plan's directions: belong, live, thrive, access, preserve, and create. They represent the aspirations of Edmontonians and articulate the choices we need to make to become a healthier, more urban, climate-resilient, supportive of a prosperous region. So let me focus on the region for a second, because I'd like to stress that the city plan is not just about building a better Edmonton, but rather a better Edmonton metro region as a whole, with a strong center city driving prosperity for our extended community. Our region is still one of the fastest growing metropolitan regions in the country, and the city plan leverages that economic strength for the long term by promoting regional connectivity and shared prosperity through coordination, communication, and advocacy, because we know we're stronger when we work together to attract industries, to build communities, and to drive innovation. But at the heart of it, as I started, the city plan is the people's plan, and it is the result of 2 years of robust engagement with thousands of conversations with Edmontonians and industry experts and subject matter experts. And it reflects those conversations in the actions it calls us to take. It is asking us to be bold and to take on with courage the major issues before us today. And this is not a long vision, but one we need to start today. And I think we've embarked on much of it already. But such growth and change will not happen today or tomorrow, but gradually over the years and decades and even generations to come. And so before I pivot to the other matter of the day, I don't usually do this, but the mayor does have to sign the bylaws, and I'm going to sign the city plan. That makes me happy. And thanks to Adam and Stephanie and the team at the city for this extraordinary piece of work. So shifting gears to more somber matters before us presently, it is, as I've said before, extremely distressing and heartbreaking to know that within the span of a month, more than 250 people have died from COVID-19 in our province. In addition to continuing to press the Alberta government for stronger public health orders that will help curb the spread, City Council will look at further measures we can enact on our own, details of which will be explored at a special council meeting I have called for tomorrow. I maintain, however, that COVID-19 is not a virus constrained by municipal borders, and that the best way to tackle that spread is still via at least a region-wide approach implemented by the provincial government using their stronger tools, which in turn will ensure that we're not playing intermunicipal whack-a-mole with this deadly virus. So I'll be watching the COVID-19 update very closely today for signals that the government will be taking more stringent measures under their authority. However, regardless of what is or isn't announced later today, I want Edmontonians to know that your City Council will continue to explore every option we can to protect you and your community and our economy. And finally, I want to stress that while all orders of government play an important and essential role in combating COVID-19, Edmontonians' dedication to the fight against this virus remains key to our success. Now, I know the fatigue is real. I'm feeling it too. But we cannot let up. We must continue to do our part to tackle this spread by staying home as much as possible and following all of the public health orders that by now we know. So now I'm going to turn it over to Adam to offer a few comments, and then of course I'll be happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, good afternoon, I guess. Edmonton City Plan is a long-range plan. It will help us hold firm to our vision and goals for Edmonton, but adjust our actions and in the face of disruption, opportunity, or constraint. Because if there's anything we've learned over the past few months, it's to be adaptable and prepared for disruption. We all know the pandemic is having a significant impact on Edmonton, but our sights are still set on creating the city that we heard Edmontonians want. We are committed to building a brighter future for the young Edmontonians and those who haven't found their way here yet. We are committed to forward with focused solutions. Now, with Council's endorsement of the city plan and the mayor signing it today, administration will work on translating this visionary document into actions. The city plan has come further to life as we begin the process of aligning it to our budget. Because fundamentally, our budget is a tool that brings the plan to life. We'll continue to see more work on this front as we align the budget to the city's plan in our next 4-year budget cycle. Throughout 2021, many of our conversations with Council will be about advancing the city plan. Projects like the Economic Development Action Plan, the 1.5-degree climate change report, zoning bylaw renewal, and district planning are just a few examples of the ways in which we have already begun to activate the city plan and continue to demonstrate our commitment to building a financially and environmentally viable future for all Edmontonians. The city plan welcomes ongoing change and opens up new opportunities for development across Edmonton. Being ready for growth sets our community up to attract and retain new residents and private investment to drive our economy forward. And we all know that it's an important goal for a recovery from COVID. This is a plan for the whole city. We're inviting all of our partners, social agencies, industry, our educational institutions, and the many entrepreneurs to work alongside us, reimagining our city. Together, we are all city builders. Shifting gears, I want to echo the mayor's comments about the alarming COVID-19 numbers in the Edmonton Health Zone. As you know, the safety of Edmontonians and city staff are our first priority. We've been exploring what other actions we could take to interrupt the accelerated spread of the virus and strengthen the existing restrictions that have been put in place. At tomorrow's special city council meeting, we intend to bring forward information and advice on possible actions that will support social gathering limitations. We will be able to share more after tomorrow's meeting once council has been presented the information, and both the mayor and I and Stephanie are available to answer any questions that you may have on the city plan or pandemic related items.
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll open up for questions now. We'll go to each one of you for a question and then a follow-up. Then at the end, we'll open it up for any last questions. So first, we'll go to Vinesh Pratap with Global, please. Vinesh?
Sure. Yeah, we'll get the mayor up. There's a lot of topics here today, so hopefully we can get a third question in if possible. I do want to talk about this morning's presentation first off, where it's showing a potential revenue shortfall for 2021 at $152 million. So, now we're talking about the possibility of tapping into the FSR. How concerned are you, Mayor, that we are having to access potentially this rainy day account, and what could that mean if that is the case?
Well, thanks, Vinesh. I mean, we're obviously still forecasting significant additional costs for PPE and cleaning, as well as substantially reduced revenues for transit and rec centers and a few other things, but those are the big two going into 2021. We have squirreled away enough money from some of our expenditure management in 2020 and forecasted expenditure management in 2021 to cover all of this without having to dip into the general financial stabilization reserve. So at this point, we're still not looking to tap the rainy day fund. There are two financial stabilization reserves. There's the unappropriated, which is the true rainy day fund, and then there's the appropriated, which is money earmarked for a particular purpose, but held in reserve. And so the draws in 2021 that were approved by the motion today are money that was provided in aid and also savings from some of our expenditure management from 2020 that's being rolled over in the appropriated financial stabilization reserve for use into 2021. So some of this is just a financial year-end accrual timing issue, so we're not, to be crystal clear, dipping into the rainy day fund itself at this point. What we discussed today is that it is there if we need it, if the forecasts prove to be worse in 2021, and if there continue to be additional costs without offsetting savings or grants to support our operations into 22. There is the rainy day fund if we need it. But to be crystal clear, we're not yet draining the rainy day fund. It's there if it's still raining more heavily next year than we're forecasting or beyond the end of next year into 2022.
Vinesh, would you like a follow-up there?
Yes, please. If we can, Mayor, just address the tweet that you put out this morning and the special council meeting tomorrow. We see and hear the concern in your voice, but how much more concerned are you today compared to, let's say, even just last week?
Well, the numbers on the weekend remain concerning. The positivity rate is a very concerning, within the testing, is a very concerning forward-looking indicator, an indicator that there may be, in fact, a lot more people out there who have the virus than have been tested for it. So the numbers are likely more significant even than what is being reported. And as long as reported and unreported numbers are continuing to grow because there's still too much contact happening, we are on a collision course with calamity. Now, the measures that the province brought in a couple of weeks ago will have an impact on that, and I hear them saying, give us time to see what that impact is in the numbers. But our position remains, and council, well, my position, I will say, remains that I think stronger measures are required, and some equity for businesses who've chosen to close versus those who haven't, particularly in the hospitality sector. And so I think council is going to have a thorough discussion outside the context of our emergency powers. So we still have an emergency advisory committee meeting later this week. But I wanted to add a specific discussion where city administration can report back on some of the other tools we have at our disposal to support businesses and support public health using our normal municipal government powers, which are not subject to veto by the provincial government, unlike any of our emergency powers. And so I want to, administration's ready to bring some information back, or will be ready tomorrow morning, to bring some information back, and then also potentially to put measures in place as later this week in the form of bylaws, which do take some time to prepare. And so administration's been working very hard to prepare for a conversation this week about stronger measures the city could bring in. I want to be crystal clear, and a lot of people are asking us to take this action proactively. We would see this as a last resort, having the city move to strengthen the restrictions that are in place to lower contact and lower transmission, because the fair and equitable thing and the clearest thing and the most clearly mandated approach would be for the province to strengthen measures at least the metropolitan scale, so that it's a level playing field between people in St. Albert, Beaumont, Edmonton, Parkland County, et cetera, across the health zone. So we continue to urge that. I suspect council will want to put that urging in writing tomorrow as well to the provincial government, which I gather is reviewing the situation today, and will have further announcements today or tomorrow potentially. And so hopefully we won't need to act, but I want to be crystal clear, if we have to, we will.
Thank you. Let's go to Dustin Cook, please, Post Media.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, this afternoon there's 2 private reports from the Police Commission going to Council stemming from a very public hearing. I'm wondering if you can clarify why these are in private, because we heard a couple weeks ago that there would be more to come on December 7th in public. So why are these in private? What can you tell us about the reports, and when will they be made public?
Well, they're the police service and the police commission, well, properly the police commission's reports, and so they'd have to speak to that, because they've asked to bring them in private because there may be some intergovernmental implications. Obviously, some of their funding and the legislation that is under review right now for police accountability and police governance, those are all in the hands of the province. And so I understand, though I haven't seen the information myself that they want to bring, I understand that some of it has intergovernmental implications. And so the premise here is to share it with council first for discussion and understanding of, in essence, the politics around it, prior to a public discussion of the material that will be presented. But I do expect that in the fullness of time, the information will be made public and discussed publicly, certainly before any decisions are made one way or the other. So it's essentially a courtesy to council to get to see the information first and make some determinations about the intergovernmental strategy with respect to options and suggestions and analysis that the service and the commission are bringing. But not having seen it myself, I only understand that's the rationale for bringing it in private at this point. But my expectation would be any decisions arising would be made publicly.
Dustin, would you like to follow up?
I do, thank you. This one's probably for Adam on the budget discussions from this morning. Adam, I'm wondering if council does decide to fund the ask of Explore Edmonton and open those 6 additional rec centers, does that require a budget adjustment in 2021 and will impact the tax levy, or no, it's one time? How will that be funded if it's not going to impact the 2021 tax levy?
Thanks, Dustin. The decision, if council were to choose to fund the one-time ask of Explore Edmonton and the staged opening of the rec facilities that were highlighted in the report, that would be through one-time funding. And on the basis of how we presented the information, just under 100 million, based on council approving the recommendations in the report, has been committed in terms of expense reductions. The remaining 53 million has been identified for allocation for other pressures and needs, and that could be where the Explore Edmonton ask is included, and the phased opening of the rec centers as well.
Thanks. Let's head over to Carly Robinson with City News, please. Carly?
Hi, thanks. I'll start with Adam and the pandemic response. So just to clarify, tomorrow's discussion would be about potential changes to bylaws to help with public health. This would be outside of emergency measures. So can you talk a little bit about what this would look like, what the process would be, and what the what we could see tomorrow, what might be on the table.
So to start out first, what we've been looking at is any adjustments or restrictions that we could potentially include in addition to the provincial restrictions that we could make through either a bylaw or bylaw adjustment. As it's still under development, I don't have specifics other than to say it would be sort of in the vein of non-essential activities in the city of Edmonton. So looking at some of those non-essential services as we did in the spring and seeing if there are some additional restrictions that we could apply to those services.
Follow up?
Yeah, for the mayor, you've been calling for weeks, for quite some time now, for the province to do something, saying this is not something you want to do. How does it feel that you're now at that stage of maybe needing to take that step?
Well, I will say that I had 3 conversations with the Premier last week, and they were open-minded conversations all around about the challenges that our province is facing. And Mayor Nenshi was on a couple of those calls. And the spirit was very much, how can the cities help get this situation back under control? And so I have some sense of what the province is grappling with, and I understand that they are taking a look at what additional measures and steps they may take in response to the numbers, which are not coming down as fast as we all would have hoped based on the measures from 2 weeks ago. And I communicated clearly both the offer to help if it makes sense for the city to act in certain ways, but also was crystal clear that our preference is that the province use its tools under public health emergency legislation and that it act in whatever it does on a consistent and regional basis for equity. And since people and the workforce and the virus all move borderlessly around a region of 1.4 million people, only 1 million of whom live in the core city. And so, you know, we've heard that message coming back from the province in the public briefings, recognition of that regional dimension, and so that's encouraging. And I've made crystal clear that what I'm hearing from Edmontonians and from frontline folks in the healthcare system and public health experts is that stronger measures are required, and hopefully we'll see that from the legislature in the next day.
Okay, let's head next to Natasha Reeb with CBC. Natasha, please.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to follow up on that as well, because in previous discussions about the legislation and what the city is able to do, can we get a bit of clarity, I guess, on what legislation, under what legislation the city can make those changes?
So the city has...
Go ahead.
Sure. So the first issue is that the emergency management legislation affords municipalities the opportunity to declare states of local emergency, as we did in the spring, and empowers us to make certain orders and gives us fairly sweeping powers, but there are some limitations on the powers, particularly with respect to limitations on certain categories of business. And so that means that there are some challenges with using emergency management tools to regulate certain business activity like eat-in dining, which again, most of the evidence shows that, and I'll pause to say that, you know, our restaurateurs and hospitality folks were phenomenal through Restart at observing all the rules and keeping people safe. And at 25 to 50, even to 100 cases per 100,000 in circulation in the community, the risk was quite low. At approaching 1,000 cases per 100,000, and those are just the ones we know about, with R still well above 1, I think the risk of all forms of gathering activity, even with plexiglass and all the cleaning restrictions, starts to become an occupational health issue in those workplaces, starts to become a consumer protection question for people. And frankly, many of the businesses are asking us to be closed so that they can maximize their access to federal aid that's only available to businesses that have been closed for in-room dining. And so, mindful of all of those considerations, we at our last Emergency Advisory Committee meeting asked repeatedly whether state of local emergency and emergency orders issued by the municipality would be able to achieve that. And the answer is maybe, but probably not. And even if they can, there is the overriding risk of essentially a veto of those orders. Because in legislative changes to the Emergency Management Act in the spring, the province introduced an ability to quash any order coming from any municipal emergency management agency for any reason with the stroke of a pen. And so for us to move in that direction, send signals to our public and business community, and then run the risk of being countermanded, really undermines the effectiveness of that tool. And our point again is that the best tool is provincial public health orders issued at the zone and region-wide level that are consistent to businesses and easy to communicate to citizens across our borderless region. Absent that, the other possibility that we've been looking at, really to get to the heart of your question, but that's all important context for how we get to this point, is that the city has broad authority to regulate certain activities of business under the Municipal Government Act, with a variety of ends in mind, including public safety, general public well-being, as well as the health of those businesses and potentially supporting their ability to maximize their access to aid. So for an economic development, economic resiliency basis. So the city has powers under the Municipal Government Act to make regulations for business. Obviously, they would be temporary and they would be motivated for public health reasons. And so we asked administration, or they suggested we could look at those tools. We gave feedback at the Emergency Advisory Committee. We'd like that explored. And then administration, in consultation with the city manager, is now able to present some more information on that tomorrow and potentially bring bylaws to council on as early as Wednesday to enact potential closures of certain activities of business on a temporary basis to combat the spread of the virus and support access to maximum federal aid, ideally. We also have to work through with the federal government whether that eligibility would follow these measures. Otherwise, it would be problematic for that reason. So a lot of details still in motion. This is moving very fast. And it's really, to be honest, plan B, because we would like the province to act within its authority to limit the opportunity for transmission in bars, restaurants, lounges, casinos, and other potential transmission sites when the virus is clearly out of control right now in our community.
Natasha, would you like to follow up on there?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I mean, if the city decides to close non-essential businesses on its own, Mayor Iveson, do you feel like you would have support from the Premier on that? Even if it's just for 2 weeks or something?
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. But again, the city council was clear we wanted to see all of our options in this regard. At the end of the day, I answered to Edmontonians who are telling me that stronger measures need to be taken. Again, we would like to take any measures in lockstep with the province, and those measures probably are needed in St. Albert and Strathcona County and Calgary, just like they're needed here. So it'd be much more beneficial to the public and equitable to businesses across jurisdictions in this province for the province to use its powers to flex and do what needs to be done here. But I feel empowered based on the feedback I've been getting from members of council whose ears are to the ground, and from our public and from our business community, that additional steps need to be taken, and that folks want the city to act if the province doesn't. But I hold out hope, I do, based on the conversations I had last week, that the province will act substantially in the next day or two. We just need to be ready for anything at this point.
Thanks. Let's head over to Jeremy Thompson with CTV, please.
Hi, Mayor. More to do with this COVID stuff and a little bit outside of what you've been talking about already. Just saw a whole lot of activity at dog parks, parks and stuff like that over the weekend, as of course people have been advised to do. But that then starts to bring in concerns about how close people are getting together, all that kind of stuff. Given that particularly off-leash parks were closed early on during the pandemic response, is there, are you looking at doing that again? And just to sort of looking for a general kind of message to Edmontonians about gathering outside.
I think we learned a lot of lessons early in the pandemic about the value of supporting people being outside and for dog owners as well. To be able to get out, and provided people are maintaining distancing, which by and large people are, it's very, very safe and of public health benefit for people to get outside for their mental health, for their physical health, for their social well-being, provided they maintain the distance. And I was out quite a bit this weekend and saw people observing the rules very, very respectfully. I went to the community rink and we had a little informal system to make sure that there were never more than 10 people on the ice. So we had no penalties for extra players on the ice. So I think Edmontonians are doing well. I think to have the message on this outside. However, while the risk is lower outside, the risk is higher right now because of the amount of virus that is active within our community, and so extra precautions need to be taken all around. The city will continue to monitor and inspect, and I've been clear, and I think council is of a mind that much stronger enforcement is needed where people do not get the message, and more tickets are being issued. We appreciate the province delegating the authority to do stronger enforcement to our peace officers, and I expect that people who don't get the message will have an expensive reminder of that, and that there'd be very little public sympathy for people who flout these rules at this stage.
Jeremy, would you like to follow up?
Yes, please. About the budget, imagine that. Just wondering, I know you tried to be very, very clear when you answered Dinesh about this FSR withdrawal for 2021. I just want to double and triple check. It looks like in the documents that for this year's budget hole of $152 million-ish, you're moving some money around from federal and provincial funding, which means you don't have to take money from the FSR, but it looks to me like to fill the 2021 hole, you would have to do that. Do I have that wrong?
Yes. So let me try again. We have to apply the federal aid that we received to expenses we incurred no later than March 31st of 2021. Our hole goes beyond March 2021, but we also have offsetting savings from other cuts that we've made to deal with the financial situation. So really this is an accounting issue of the timing of when we're booking certain revenues against certain expenses. And so we're booking the dollars related to the federal aid package and provincial aid package in 2020 because we received them in November, finally. And so they show up there and cover a bunch of expenses. We have some additional money that's freed up by that because that federal money offsets some other savings that we had. What we're doing is booking those savings into the appropriated financial stabilization reserve so that we can roll that money forward on a one-time basis to 2021 in order to pay for extraordinary costs in 2021. So we have enough money between the savings from cutting back on certain activity, frankly the layoffs that we did, to cover some of the expenses, and we also have additional revenue from the grants. So in essence, we're taking the gift certificate that we got from the federal and provincial government and spending it on groceries so that we can take this year's grocery budget and roll it over to next year's extra costs related to COVID. It's just a timing thing. So we're not, again, the financial stabilization reserve has two components. The unappropriated, which is the $140 million, which is the rainy day fund, properly, and then the appropriated, which actually has a couple $100 million of other money in it that is earmarked for future activities. So we've put some money by this motion this year into the appropriated to be drawn down next year. So it is a draw from the FSR, but not from the rainy day fund portion of the FSR, but from the appropriated portion.
Okay. I know we've got a lot on the go here, but we'll go to some final questions here if anybody's got some last questions just to clarify here. Has anybody got anything?
I have another one for Adam, please.
I've got to run up to another meeting, so I'll leave Adam to answer this question. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, we'll get Adam up here and then you can ask your question. Go ahead, Natasha.
Thank you. Hi, Adam. I know you get to hand over the reins next year, but I wanted to get your thoughts on transit and what the city might be looking at to yet again kind of increase safety on buses, especially. So I still notice some bus drivers don't wear masks, and I know that they're allowed to do that because of the shields. Are you and let's say David Aiken's team, are you looking at kind of changing the rules on that?
Changing the rule.
For public transit.
Changing the rules with respect to what, Natasha?
Okay, sorry, that's kind of a double-ended question here. So first of all, just like, are you looking at any further measures to increase safety on transit in general? And then when it comes to operators or not wearing masks, are you considering like amending the bylaw to have them wear masks, for example?
So first question, we're doing quite a bit to try and ensure that transit is as safe as possible in this current environment. The additional cleaning that happens, the mandatory mask bylaw that council approved, the additional non-destination rider monitoring, ensuring that's managed within the transit system are all steps that we've taken to try to do our best to ensure that transit is as safe as possible. Doesn't mean that we can't be looking at more options to do that. At this time, we're focused on those as the primary method. Specifically as it relates to the drivers, there is a consideration as it relates to safe operations for the driver. The shield, similar to what we have in council, is a barrier that prevents any direct spread of any airborne liquids. And so it is a legitimate measure to ensure that that doesn't happen. At this time, we're not contemplating masks for our drivers, and we have to consider the implications of our masks wearing, or our bus drivers wearing masks. As an example right now, and you can see it on my glasses, the concern that it creates related to their visibility and sight lines as they carry out their duties of driving the bus. So we feel like there's a good system in place to prevent the spread with our bus drivers with the shield, but we are constantly looking at ways to make sure that transit is as safe as possible for our patrons.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who wants some final questions? Keep in mind, we've got to get the interim city manager back to his job here, but is there anybody else with clarifications?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.